Alright guys, well the DCEU is dead. Surprise, no, that's been old news, but the DCU is coming. Or at least it's already here, but, it's coming in full force in July with Superman. And we're going to get some more promo from it soon, and, there's a lot to get excited about, a lot to look forward to. Lanterns, Peacemaker, Supergirl, all of that good stuff. But one project that has been, I guess, quietly brewing in development for a little bit, because we've gotten some new updates about it, is an animated Blue Beetle project. Now, Blue Beetle, right, was one of the last projects in the DCEU starring JOLO MARIDUEñA. And he played Blue Beetle. The film, it seemed mostly separate from the DCEU, although it took place in that continuity, I suppose. But, this was the new version of Blue Beetle, Jaime Reyes. And it's similar to how Ant-Man took their approach of not doing Hank Pym, but doing Hank Pym as the mentor, and then Scott Lang being Ant-Man, with Ted Kord being missing from Blue Beetle. So there was that. But Blue Beetle came out, and it made barely any money. It really, 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 really tanked at the box office. And again, we talked about this when we were talking about Andy Muschietti's comments about why The Flash failed. There were many reasons why Blue Beetle didn't make a lot of money at the box office. One, primarily being the DCEU was just on life support. It was dying. It was on its last legs. And so, people had just given up on the DCEU, and it wasn't really marketed too heavily. It was going to go to Max originally, just straight to Max, but they decided to put it in theaters. And to be fair to Blue Beetle, critically, it did okay. I think it's, it has a decent critical rating and all that kind of stuff. People generally seem to like it. I, personally, right? I was one of the people who came out of Blue Beetle, one of the few, I suppose. And I was like, I just didn't like the movie. And eventually in our DCE rewatch series, where I post some other separate episodes about, each individual DCEU project, we're usually posting those in between regularly scheduled episodes of the Access Blockbusters Pod when I'm not available to record live episodes. But, we'll eventually get to Blue Beetle. We're on Wonder Woman right now, so we have a long way to go. We'll eventually get there. But, my original viewing experience of Blue Beetle was not super positive. I just didn't like the film that much. I thought the villains were really, really terrible. And I, for the most part, just thought it was kind of a generic-ish kind of film. And so anyways, all that aside, this isn't about my thoughts on Blue Beetle. We'll talk about Blue Beetle somewhere else down the line. But JOLO MARIDUEñA then later confirmed, once the DCEU had officially ended and once the DCU was starting to get going, that he actually would be back in DC as Blue Beetle. The question became, okay, was he going to be the DCU's Blue Beetle? Was he just going to come back, in some capacity, but we weren't sure how? And was it going to be in a movie? Was he going to be part of the Booster Gold project? And so now, JOLO MARIDUEñA, who is, I believe, promoting Cobra Kai, he's a part of Cobra Kai, was at the Saturn Awards, and the Direct got to interview him, and they actually asked him what's going on with this Blue Beetle project, because it was announced, I think James Gunn was the one who said they're going to be doing an animated Blue Beetle project. So, the Direct said, quote, this is a back and forth between them. Direct says, quote, "It's a crime that we haven't seen Blue Beetle for as long as it's been." JOLO says, "Hey man, arrest me." He laughs. "I'm ready to come back. We're hitting hard the animated project, hoping to get this settled out this year to show everyone next year." And then there's another interaction where the Direct says, "Have you talked to Gunn at all about, like, hey, animated is great, this is going to be awesome, but when am I going to put the suit on again for real, though?" And JOLO says, "Look, he's got his hands in the kitchen. I don't want to walk in while the chef is doing his thing. But I can say that once they're finished with this 3-course meal, I'm ready. And look, I have no reason to believe that he's lying." He goes on to say, sorry, this quote is kind of long. He goes on to say, "Like whatever, we're adults. Say whatever you want to say." He laughs again. "I'm just happy to have done this first one, and I'll continue to spread the word about that while we get the second one drafted up." So this little back and forth here between the Direct and JOLO seems to confirm a couple things, to me at least. Number one, I think it pretty much confirms that this Blue Beetle will be a part of the DCU, because that is a question, right? Like, they might be just doing stuff. They have a Harley Quinn show that's going on, season 5, which, by the way, Harley Quinn's a really fun show. But yeah, I mean, they have other things going on in Elseworld. So, the thought was, is this animated film or show, sorry, I think it's a show, right? Yeah, animated show. Is this just going to be a one-off kind of thing where they bring back JOLO to do something fun and then, they don't really have him come back in the DCU? But it looks like from JOLO's comments that, no, he's, talked with James Gunn, and there are plans to bring him into the live-action universe, which, again, seems to indicate DCU. It's just not going to happen as of yet. The other really interesting thing is it looks like this project is much further along in development than we thought. Now, JOLO could just be saying this, right? He could just be saying, "Oh yeah, I want to get to it this year, and then we're going to start next year, or we're going to have it out next year." That might be wishful thinking, and it wouldn't be the first time that an actor, says something and tries to put it out in the universe and it doesn't really go that way. Like, how many times have we seen actors and directors go, oh yeah, I'm really excited for this project, hopefully we're going to get it out next year, but then it's not actually up to them, right? It's up to the studio, it's up to James Gunn in this case, it's up to DC. So it's interesting, right? Because that could be the case, but it seems like he has an idea of what the production timeline is for this project. At least he thinks that they're going to get to it this year, and maybe it's just his best guess that they're going to release it next year. So again, is this a DCU project? I don't know. I think so. I think all indications are that, but we haven't heard anything about this project other than now when JOLO is like, yeah, no, it's going to come out next year, because James Gunn seems to have his slate pretty set. He's like, yeah, we're going to do, we did Creature Commandos, we're going to do Superman, we're going to do Peacemaker Season 2, then Lanterns and Supergirl, and he's been pretty quiet about everything else. I think that, the Clayface movie, I think, is going to come out in 2026 as well, but otherwise just been pretty quiet. So is Blue Beetle, whatever this animated series, is that going to be a part of that slate? It's hard to say. But I think that, it's encouraging because, look, I didn't love Blue Beetle. I just mentioned that earlier. But I don't think JOLO was the problem with Blue Beetle. I think, actually, to me, JOLO was kind of similar to Shang-Chi, to Simu Liu's acting in Shang-Chi, where I don't think they're the best. They're not going to give Oscar-caliber performances, and they're very capable of growing into that. But in Blue Beetle and in Shang-Chi, those two actors who, again, came from kind of, I haven't seen Cobra Kai, to be fair, but I know Simu Liu came from Kim's Convenience, right? It's a very sitcom kind of show. And he fit the MCU mold. They both fit the MCU mold very well, of just or the superhero mold. Not both MCU, one DCU, one MCU. They fit the mold pretty well, right? Of just, action-oriented, being able to deliver those one-liners, being able to hold a film up, but, not necessarily overpower it. They did really well in those roles. I think that Simu Liu was really helped, right? Because Shang-Chi, I love Shang-Chi. What a great movie. But for me, Blue Beetle was not helping JOLO at all. But I don't think JOLO himself was the problem with it. So I'd be interested to see him come back as Blue Beetle, and it looks like we're going to be getting that much sooner than we thought. Guys, what do you think about this? Do you think Blue Beetle, an animated series, is going to be coming out in 2026, or do you think that this is just wishful thinking on JOLO's part? Because we will get it eventually, it seems like, but it remains to be seen whether or not it's going to come out in 2026. Let me know in the comments down below.